Tonight on the Your Life Matters Show podcast.
Yeah, most definitely, because I couldn't continue to serve in the capacity I wanted to. So this
Mhm.
is giving me a chance to serve.
Right.
And I think for my veterans, like at the end of the day, yes, like I was vehicle maintenance. I changed oil and I sat in an air conditioned garage because I was Air Force. Like I had the good life. But I still put on the uniform. I still got yelled at in boot camp. I still had those things. And so for my veterans too, I feel like we have a more positive conversation because we've been there, done that. And so
behind every struggle, there's a story, and every story deserves to be heard. This is the Your Life Matters Show podcast. Your hosts are Steve Hodgson and licensed psychotherapist Dr. Eric L. Davis.
What happens when your body starts to fail you? Before your life even really begins. For millions of Americans, chronic illness isn't just physical. It's a mental battle fought in silence. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, nearly 6 in 10 adults live with at least one chronic condition, and many face depression, anxiety, and isolation along the way. But what happens when that struggle becomes your entire reality? When pain becomes your routine, mobility becomes a challenge, and hope feels just out of reach. For Rita Honeycutt, this wasn't a moment. It was her life. 4 heart surgeries, chronic illness, mobility challenges, depression, and a question so many people quietly ask: will I ever feel like myself again? But this isn't just a story about what she faced. It's a story about what she refused to surrender to. Because somewhere between the setbacks, the exhaustion, and the days when showing up felt impossible, she made a decision not to be perfect, but to keep going, step by step, rep by rep, day by day. She rebuilt more than her body. She rebuilt her identity, from fat to fit, from broken to rebuilding, from surviving to showing others how to live again. Because the real transformation was never just physical. It was mental. This is the mental battle behind Rita Honeycutt's health journey. Fat to fit. The mental battle behind Rita Honeycutt's health journey, mental health. Real stories, real people. Here are your hosts.
Well, howdy, and welcome back to the Your Life Matters Show podcast. I'm Steve Hodgson. I'm here along with my co-host, who's the person who reminds me that my thoughts are not facts, Dr. Eric L. Davis. Dr. Davis, it's great to be back here again, and our audience is growing, at recording time, which is probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I mean, we're passing the 7,000 mark for subscribers, and we thank you all, watching each episode. We promise to keep bringing you stuff that's interesting. We have some really, really good shows that are still coming that are lined up. One of my favorites that I can't wait to do is another music act, but they're all veterans, male and female members of the band, but they are all veterans, and their music catalog, it's all original music, but it's written about fighting and all the time that they put in. And you'll like it because it touches a little more towards the metal. It's a very hard-edged music and stuff. So I've been working with person, I'm trying to think of their name, Terry Blair, who's setting all this up, and he came through Utah Burgess. He's a close friend with Utah, so we're setting this up and getting all the groundworks for that. Actually, I'd like to. I don't know how he'll feel about it. I'd love to have the entire band on with us. Yeah, I think that would be a much more interesting interview. No, I shouldn't say much more interesting. I think it would make it very interesting. So before we get heavily into today's episode, please give a listen to our sponsor, Waypost Counseling. See, you or someone you know may need their service. And remember, you can do these sessions from the privacy of your own home. So let's give them a listen.
Do you sometimes go through life and begin to think maybe something in your life feels off? Not broken, not falling apart, just heavier than it used to be. Stress, anxiety, thoughts that don't quiet down. Or maybe it's your relationship, conversations turning into arguments, distance growing where connection used to be, and you're not sure how to get back. Or maybe it's something more private, like gambling, something that started small, but now it's affecting your finances, your relationships, your peace of mind. And you keep telling yourself, I'll figure it out, but it hasn't gotten easier. The truth is, you don't have to do this alone. At Waypost Counseling, help is available for individuals, for couples, and for those struggling with addiction. And you don't even have to leave your home. If you're watching this right now, here's your reason to ask for help. We offer secure online sessions. You can talk to someone from a place that feels safe and private. No pressure, no judgment, just a conversation that could change everything. If something in you is saying, "Are they talking about me?" Maybe it's time. It's time to listen to that voice inside that is begging you to relieve the stress and anxiety and make the call. Waypost Counseling. Dial 317-762-0904 or dial 317-659-0179. Also, you can visit them on the web at waypostcounseling.com for more information, because we do not need to tell you your life does matters. And taking that first step could make all the difference. Remember that reaching out for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength to begin to get the best of your life back again. Please, for you and your loved ones, make the call now.
Now, today's episode is one that hits on multiple levels. We're talking about something a lot of people go through, but don't always talk about openly. What happens to your mental health when your physical health starts to fall apart?
Yeah, and that's a really important question because we often separate the two, but in reality, they're very deeply connected. When someone's dealing with chronic illness, pain, or repeated medical issues, it doesn't just affect the body, it affects identity, mood, motivation, and how you see your future.
And today we have a very special guest that's joining us. Her name is Rita Honeycutt, and she's lived through this in a very real way. Now, we're talking about someone who went through four heart surgeries, dealt with chronic illness, mobility challenges, and depression. And she's also a veteran, too. We're talking about veterans there. And a lot of people watching or listening today may relate to that feeling of things aren't going the way they used to be. And I don't know how to get back.
Yeah, that sense of loss is very huge. It's not just about illness itself, it's about grieving the version of yourself that you feel like you've lost. And that can lead to depression, frustration, even hopelessness if it's not addressed.
You see, and what makes Rita's story so powerful is that she didn't just face those challenges. She found a way to start rebuilding, not perfectly, not overnight, but she did it step by step.
Yeah. And that's such an important point. A lot of people think that change has to be dramatic or immediate, but in reality, it's consistency. It's small decisions, showing up even when you don't feel like it.
And you think about that, that's like, someone going to see, it's like, a therapist. It's not just one visit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not done to stretch it out. And it's even the same with chiropractic. It's done, work it step by step by step along the way. And I think that's something we're really going to dive into today. Not the physical journey from what she calls Fat to Fit, which is also the name of her book, but the mental battle behind it, because that's where the real work starts to happen.
Yeah. So if you've ever felt stuck, if you've ever struggled to get back to who you used to be, or even figure out who you are now, this is an episode you're going to want to stick with.
Definitely is. Now, before we get to Rita and her wonderful interview we just did, I have a few questions which might help set it up for our listeners and help them understand really what tonight's episode is all about. So, Dr. Davis, when someone's dealing with chronic physical health issues like heart problems, autoimmune conditions, mobility challenges, how closely tied is that to their mental health?
It's actually inseparable. So it is very tied to their mental health. Physical and mental health operate as one integrated system. So when the body's under chronic stress, it directly impacts the brain. At the same time, mental health influences our physical outcomes. So, depression can reduce energy, motivation, anxiety can amplify physical symptoms. So, what we often see is a feedback loop. Physical illness impacts mental health, and mental health in turn affects how someone copes with the illness.
You know, it's so true. You used the word motivation there. And I know myself, where folks, if you notice, I got to get myself a little bulkier again because losing the weight, it seems like I lost a lot of muscle in the weight. Okay. But it's the motivation behind wanting to do that that's so difficult because you start to, oh, I don't feel good.
Yeah.
And I suffer from allergies. I live in Florida. We've been having some really bad allergies. And it makes it hard to get that motivation to say, I need to go out and mow today.
Yeah.
It's got to be done, or I got to go in the garage. I have weights and stuff. I need to start working out. You got to get past that motivation, and that's your mental health is doing
It
that
is.
to you. So a lot of people talk about losing a part of themselves after a serious diagnosis or even an ongoing health struggle. Can you explain what's happening psychologically when someone feels they're not who they used to be?
So, what they're really experiencing is a form of identity disruption. In many ways, grief also, because people don't just lose physical functioning, they lose roles, routines, independence, and sometimes their sense of purpose. So if someone's always seen themselves as strong, dependable, independent, and suddenly they can't function in the same way, it creates a gap between who they were and who they feel like they are now. So when people say I'm not who I used to be, what they're really saying is I don't recognize myself anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Because they're really the same person.
yeah,
It's just how they're seeing themselves at
it's
that
just
point.
integrating this new reality into a revised sense of self.
Mm-hmm. When they diagnosed me with this stuff, the respiratory stuff, I I said, okay, here comes the new Steve. Because I was still Steve.
Yep.
It's just how good it present, and it's still the nut crazy guy that that I used to be. It just haven't changed. I just wear oxygen now. That's the only difference. So, how often do you see depression develop as a result of physical health challenges, and what makes that kind of depression different from other forms?
Well, so to answer the first part of the question, it's extremely common. So we see that very often. Um, with chronic illness, I'd say that depression's more the rule than the exception. At some point in the process, um, what makes it different is that it's often rooted in a very real, ongoing circumstance. It's not just internal mood dysregulation, it's a response to loss, limitation, unpredictability, and many times chronic pain.
Now, we hear a lot about motivation. Even I talked about it. But in real life, especially when someone's dealing with pain and fatigue, motivation can disappear real quick. Trust
Mhm.
me, I live it. From a mental health standpoint, how important is discipline compared to motivation?
So motivation is unreliable, you know, um, especially when someone's physically struggling. Whereas discipline, on the other hand, carries people when motivation isn't there.
Mhm.
So that's the thing that gets us out of bed even when we don't. It's being disciplined and understanding this is what I have to do. So it's really about showing up consistently within your limits. That's what discipline would be.
And we even talk a little bit about this during the interview too,
Yeah.
as well. So now for someone who feels stuck, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally, where do they even begin? What's a realistic first step that just doesn't feel like, uh-oh, this is like too much?
I think a lot of times just starting, so no matter how small that step is, just starting. So if you need to smaller than you think you should,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with that. So like a realistic first step could be, getting out of bed, sitting in a chair, taking a short walk, even just a few minutes, any number of things, any step in the right direction.
Even if you're going to like work out, nobody says you got to do 5 reps. Start with
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and make it through the one, and maybe do the one a couple of days, and then the next day add a second one.
Yeah.
And add a third one, and the more you start adding to it, the more you can do. Um, so when someone has gone through repeated setbacks, whether it's surgeries like our guest has today, failed treatments, or just feeling like they're not making any progress, how do they start to rebuild that confidence? We talked about motivation, but how do they rebuild confidence?
So confidence is built through evidence. When someone's experienced repeated setbacks, the evidence they've accumulated could be really discouraging.
Mhm.
So we have to intentionally create new evidence, and that starts small. Instead of measuring success by big outcomes, we shift the focus to, effort, follow through, resilience. Um, for example, I showed up to my appointment.
Right.
I followed my plan today. I mean, simple things. Over time, these small wins can challenge the belief that nothing works. And that's really a great place to start and to rebuild confidence.
Yeah. We hear this phrase a lot, just show up. From your
Yep.
perspective, why is simply showing up, even in small ways, so powerful to mental health?
Because it does a number of really important things. Firstly, it reinforces a sense of agency. Like I can still do things. I can still do something. It also creates structure and predictability. It opens the door for small positive experiences or those wins, like we were just talking about.
Right.
Um, and it can also build psychological momentum, which is extremely crucial.
Well, today we're going to have a very special guest joining us. Now, Rita Honeycutt is an Air Force veteran, okay, which we thank all veterans for their service to
Yeah.
the country. She's the author of 2 books, okay. The one book, Fat to Fit, My Health Journey, and she also wrote a cookbook, which we'll talk about later too. Um, Her story is someone who's built resilience, discipline, and like we said, showing up even through those hardest days.
Yeah. Rita's faced challenges that many people can't even imagine: multiple heart surgeries, chronic illness, mobility struggles, and the mental health battles that come along with all of that.
But you see, what makes her story so powerful isn't just what she's been through, it's what she chooses to do next each and every time.
Yeah. Today, she's an endurance athlete, rider, and advocate for taking ownership of your health, both mentally and physically.
So today's guest has a story that I think a lot of people are going to connect with on a very real level. Rita Honeycutt, as we said, she's an Air Force veteran, someone who's rebuilt a life. She's faced numerous health challenges, both physically and mentally.
From multiple heart surgeries to chronic illness and depression, Rita's journey reflects something we often see, but don't always talk about openly.
And what stands out most is her decision to keep going, to keep showing up, even when it really isn't that easy. So here's the interview we did with Rita Honeycutt. Rita, thank you so very much for being with us here on today's episode. We're both really looking forward to today's conversation with you. So we have a bunch of questions we're going to ask you, but I think that's unfair to our listeners if we don't have you explain your story to us and why we've had you on today. So I'm going to turn over the floor to you. We're not going to interrupt you and let you go through your story.
Alrighty, thank you. So I have been trying to get my story out there as much as possible because I feel like what I went through, a lot of people go through. and nobody talks about it. So that is where I started a few years ago. Is I started in the same boat as most people. You come up with these health challenges in life, and you've got to figure out new ways to navigate things. And it's emotionally and physically draining. You're mentally just a mess. And what do I do now? So it all technically started back when I was about 19 years old. I was in the U.S. Air Force and started developing some heart problems. And unfortunately, from that, I was med boarded and didn't know where I wanted to go in my life. Kind of started trying to figure things out. And thankfully, I did career wise, but I didn't with the rest of my life. I was making money, which, was great. You can pay the bills, but it doesn't make a difference if you're not satisfied in all parts of your life. So, trying to deal with heart challenges was the first thing, and then trying to deal with the fact that I went from a 20-year career plan to, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? And then with that heart problem, all these new things started happening. They told me when I first got my pacemaker that I would have to go in for surgery once every 10 to 15 years. Well, we're on year 17 this year, and I've already had 4 surgeries. And the last one was the one that kind of did me in. One of my wires had snapped in half, and I went in for them to go ahead and replace that pacemaker wire. Um, the surgery was supposed to take 2 hours. Something happened. The wire uncoiled. It turned to a 6.5 hour surgery, and it just kicked my butt so hard. Healing time took so much longer than what we were anticipating. And apparently, my back had already started to have a little bit of an issue, but of course, laying around didn't make that any better. So went to the doctor and was like, man, like I've got pain shooting down my legs. Like, what do I need to do? And the first doctor was like, oh, it's because you're perimenopausal. And I'm like, hormones are not the answer to everything. And so got in with another doctor. He's like, oh, you have a herniated disc in your back. We should probably address that. And I'm like, and so got in finally with a good doctor, healing up from all this heart stuff. And he said, let's just get you mobile. Let's get you back to where you were when you joined the military. And bless his heart, he worked with me on different things. We tried different medications. We tried physical therapy. He wanted to try whatever we could, except for heavy drugs, which was what I didn't want. And within 6 weeks of working with that particular doctor, I started walking every day, even if it was 10, 15 minutes. And then it just progressed from there. Over the past 3.5 years, I started running, doing the mud runs. And this past January, I completed my first ever ultra. That's 31 miles that I ran for 8.5 hours straight. And people are like, how did you do it? And I said, every step of my story has been looking at things differently. I know that I can't do push-ups the way that somebody else can, but I can do inclined push-ups, or I can do this. And so I had to like relearn how to work out. But developing a modified program was huge. And now a friend of mine, we actually just opened, she had a gym, but we opened up a special program that works with ADA athletes because everybody deserves a safe and healthy space to be able to work out in. And so from my personal experience, I was able to take what I learned and apply it for other people. And now we're catering to people in wheelchairs and walkers, amputees, shoulder replacements. Because once you're done with physical therapy, the doctor's just kind of like, okay, bye. And it's like, no, we need the next step. And so I took this experience that could have been really, really bad and turned it into something not only positive for myself, but the people in my community. So that's where it all started.
Well, first off, before even Dr. Davis gets to it, I'm sure I'm speaking on his behalf too. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we find that, veterans and stuff we have the highest respect for. And even if I'm not mistaken, you're still working for the military, are you not?
So my job now, I am a veteran service officer. So my job is to connect veterans to their benefits. I fight and navigate the VA on their behalf.
Right, that's what I thought.
Awesome. All right, Rita, I'd love to start here. When you look back at everything that you've been through, the surgeries, health challenges, battles, what was the moment where you realized something has to change?
One day I woke up and it was unfortunately like every other day at that point. And I was wearing like Hey Dudes every day because I needed a slip-on shoe because I couldn't bend over. And I'm like, my 12-year-old daughter should not have to help me get dressed every morning. And she looked at me on one particular morning, was like, Mom, do you think you're gonna be able to bend any better? And I'm just like, no. And when I said that, it was like, oh, I am too young. At that point, I was 35 years old. I was too young to have to be able to just give up. And that was the thing, is I hadn't been giving up at that point. I was trying to find ways, but that day it was like, I have to go try a different method of doing this. And unfortunately, the neurologist I had at that point was not great. And that was the day I called my regular primary doctor and was like, can you get me in with anyone else? And he did. And that was the first step, was getting in with somebody who would listen.
So really, was it your daughter, or where did you find that energy to make it through those times when things were really uncertain or overwhelming? I mean, where did you find that from?
Well, yes, it was, my daughter has been, she is, even though she's 16 and I want to wring her neck now, she has been,
We've
she
both
has,
been there, done that. Yeah.
she has been my everything. When I first got out of the military and didn't know what to do with my life, like so many veterans battling with, thoughts of suicide and depression, like she got me through that, because every day I would wake up and say, I have to live for my daughter. I have to do this for my daughter. And so that day when she was like, Mom, you got to be able to put your own shoes on, I'm like, I have to find a way for this, because my 12-year-old she doesn't deserve that. She does not have to deserve, she doesn't deserve to have to take care of her mom. Um, and my daughter is such a nurturing soul. Like, she keeps telling me she's going to go into fashion, but I'm convinced that she's going to either be a nurse or a doctor, because she's just such a nurturing. So I say this, my daughter is also this type that will be like, Mom, you're bleeding everywhere, I need you to suck it up. But but she's also just so sweet about things, and she really was like, she has always been my motivation. Even like yesterday, I was so mad at her. She said something to me, and I'm like, God, I want to just punch this kid. And then I'm like, but I got to go to work and pay bills so I can put a roof over her head.
With teens, you got to love them, because if not, you'll end up spending a lot of time in jail.
Very true.
Yep. So, you know, how did all of this, in the long run, start to affect you mentally?
I was so depressed. I Because I had this great plan. Like, at 18 years old, actually it was before I turned 18, I joined at 17. And I was like, I'm going to do 20 years in the military and get out, become an ROTC instructor. By the time I'm 60, I'll have 2 retirements. And when that all got like just thrown down the garbage chute, it was like, what am I going to do? And it was depressing, because it's like, I had such a great plan. And I mean, how many 18-year-olds do you know that have a great plan? And it took its toll on me. I spent a lot of time like sulking and crying and not wanting to get out of bed or shower or do anything. Um, and thankfully, because of my daughter, I had no choice. I had to get up and do those things. Um, but it took a lot. And I mean, there's still some days, like yesterday, I had a rough day. My family was like, we're going to come home after you go to bed, because we're not about it today. But it was choosing to show up for myself that was really the only way I could get through it. Because when you're depressed, I mean, you have to decide, what do I have to be motivated about? And a lot of times, we talked about this briefly before we started, I didn't have anything to be motivated for, but I had to be disciplined about the things that I was doing, and pushing through. And then getting into the mental health work and working with veterans, I think really like it pushed me in a different direction, because these guys are also going through depression, anxiety, PTSD,
Right.
and we kind of all lean on each other, sometimes not in a healthy way, because military humor gets dark real quick. But it just kept pushing me every day to just keep going through and trying to find that light at the end of the tunnel.
So I was just going to ask you real quick before he answers your question, if being around the veterans, and you mentioned at 18, you had your whole life visioned out, and I'm sure most of those veterans the same way had their lives visioned out and life changes.
Yeah.
So did that help being around them?
Oh yeah, most definitely, because I couldn't continue to serve in the capacity I wanted to. So this is giving me a chance to serve.
Right.
And I think for my veterans, like at the end of the day, yes, like I was vehicle maintenance. I changed oil and I sat in an air conditioned garage because I was Air Force. Like I had the good life. But I still put on the uniform. I still got yelled at in boot camp. I still had those things. And so for my veterans too, I feel like we have a more positive conversation because we've been there, done that. And so we walk this walk together, and it makes it easier for them, because I know a lot of times our veterans get frustrated when they go to the VA and they're like, I want to talk to somebody, and they don't want to go talk to a civilian. They want to talk to somebody that was military because they're going to understand. And sometimes that's a real barrier.
Now, you've been very open about, being or feeling depressed. What did that look like for you personally when that was going on?
So it's funny because, we, in the mental health field, we talk about the different ways depression presents. And it's funny because my therapist, when I sat down and talked to her one day, she's like, your depression presents more masculine than feminine. And I was like, I know. Because typically when a woman gets depressed, she cries, she's upset, you can visibly see the sorrow. Men, and this, it's just the statistics and the science, men typically are more frustrated and angry. And she was like, why are you so angry? And I told her, I said, well, you have to understand too, when I had my daughter, I had to take on the role of both parents very early on. And so I was used to being in a more dominant role always in my life. I was always in this more dominant role. And for me, it's just, I was angry. I would cry behind closed doors, but that's not what people saw in public. But what people saw in public is they were like, oh my God, you're ready to fight everybody, which is how I got my nickname of Chihuahua, because my dad was like, you're cute and you're tiny, but you fight every.
As soon as you said Chihuahua, I did think even Dr. Davis, because he had one, and we had one.
He's right down here asleep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I knew exactly what you meant by that. And it's interesting. We had Robert Ross. He's a Canadian country and western singer who's doing stuff here in the States, but he served 20 years in the Canadian Army. And one of the things he had mentioned too was a lot of the American Legion halls, the VFW halls. One of the reasons that the veterans like to go there is, like you said, they don't want to talk amongst civilians that that only can imagine what went on. They want to talk to someone who's lived it and has walked through it and stuff. And that's why I think those places are so important for veterans. We may not, we see them in parades. Oh yeah, okay, a bunch of old people. But I know my dad, who's 94, was with the Rockazans. He was really big. He ran the New York chapter for those for like 20 years. So I know how important it is for him to connect with other veterans, because he can tell me stories all he wants, but when he's talking to his former colonel, there's a much different bond going on there than what we normally see. What was harder for you, the physical recovery or the mental recovery?
It's been surprisingly, it's been the physical. Because like mentally, I've always been
A Chihuahua.
yeah, I've been pretty resilient. Like it's funny because like I've talked to other people and they're like, if I was in your shoes, like mentally, I could not do and bounce back like you have. And I'm like, well, it makes me feel a little bit better. But physically, like that has been the challenging part, because I have these weird limitations that I have to like work around. Like with we were out we were out running one day and I was running with another heart patient, which was nice because like I don't have to like be out of breath and be running with this guy. But talking about, he was like, well, what's, because I keep my heart rate monitor on. He's like, what's your heart rate out? And I told him, and he was like, oh my God, how are you like alive? And I said, my heart does whatever it wants to do. I said, so I can't control like a normal runner can. A normal runner is sitting here in like zone 2 and can go all day. And I'm over here in like zone 4. And I'm like, it's been challenging trying to find ways to work around different things, trying to figure out how I can run and keep up the momentum and keep up the distance. And then, if I'm lifting something, I've got to modify how I'm lifting things. And even just doing like regular workouts and stuff. Like I said, I've sometimes I've got to modify the way I do push-ups because my back hurts. And even though it's gotten stronger, I'm still working through those things. So sometimes it's frustrating because I'm like, I'm not even 40. I should be able to go do these things. And so it's trying to just think about how to do things a different way. There's always a way. It's just how do I do it?
I don't think a lot of people realize, even myself, I mean, as you can see, I'm on oxygen, I've got a lung disease, but I also have herniated discs in my back. And, when you go to the gym, people look at, well, gee, why is he, you know, not going as long as everybody else is and stuff. I used to have a trainer in Indiana that used to train, and it's like, dude, I can't do that. I have to, like you say, I have to modify to my own what I know my body can allow me to do. And I'll push that a little bit, but it's like I have a fast heartbeat, and I laughed because when I heard that, when I put that heart monitor thing on, and they said, well, we got to get your heartbeat up to like 100, over 100. It's like, well, just tell me I won't take my pill before I come here. I can walk through the door and be like 110. Okay, if that's what you want. Okay, but I think people are very fast to judge certain things, and we need to be very careful of that.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we see people in a grocery store, heck, I've been mowing for the last couple of days at 2 different houses. And, every once in a while I got to stop,
Yeah.
and I just got to go in and sit down. And, people might think, boy, he was lazy, he only mowed a little bit. But yeah, but it's hot out and that affects my breathing.
Yeah.
And after a while, I bent down a few times. Now my back is killing me on top of that too. So
Yeah.
we learned from that.
Well,
Rita, oh no, go ahead.
One thing, like you're saying, like learning about modifying, like, and it's crazy too, because people don't realize when you are trying to learn how to modify the things you have to modify. I think because I'm in this world and I deal with it so often, the other day I stopped for lunch. I was working, I'm on the road, and I stopped, not to pick on Chick-fil-A, but I stopped at Chick-fil-A because I love me some Jesus chicken. And I realized a lot of our fast food places have a ramp, and that's all well and good. But when you get up to the door, what are you supposed to do?
How do you open the door? Yep.
And like people don't think about those things. And I'm like, you don't realize how much you're limiting a large part of the population by not being able to give them access to fast food restaurants, to the grocery store, to the gym. I mean, when we were building the gym in Archdale, one of the things when we went to the county and said we need a permit for a ramp, they were like, well, why do you need a ramp for a gym? And we're like, I can't believe you just asked me that question.
Yeah.
But it comes down to dollar is the answer to your story. They could put an automatic door. I mean, how many places have that, you push the button and the door will open inside. They could easily put that there, but that's another $4,000.
Yep.
And they just don't want to spend that kind of money. And it's sad.
One of the things you had spoken about previously was finding the right team. How important was that in your journey?
It is crucial, and that's across the board. So, negativity breeds negativity. And so when you, in any aspect of your life, it doesn't matter if you're the CEO of a company or you're a homeless person under the bridge, you are never going to get better if you're around the wrong people. And so putting certain players in my life was crucial. I've been very blessed. My best friend of 25 years has always been like my rock and my positive person. Like I said yesterday, I was having a rough day and she was like talking me off the ledge. She's like, you gotta see it from this perspective. And like she's been crucial, but then putting other people, finding a doctor that would listen. Everybody deserves to have a provider that is actually going to provide them services. Finding a therapist or a mental or a peer support specialist, whoever it needs to be, somebody who's going to be on your team. Your spouse, like it is crucial for your spouse to be supportive of you. My husband has been excellent. Some days, again, want to wring his neck too. But you know, when I said I want to lose weight, the first thing out of his mouth was, "You lose all the weight you want, just please don't lose your butt." And I was like, "I got you, baby." But he was just like, he was positive, encouraging, and like, he's like, "I'm not going to the gym with you, but I will be at the finish line of your races." And that's what he does. So having all those different players was crucial, because if I had somebody who was like, "Oh, well, let's go get ice cream," it's like, "Oh, I really want some ice cream." Yeah. You know, and last week when I literally crashed my bicycle into the woods, my friend was like, "You deserve ice cream," and we went. But like having a person who's also just going to be like, "Well, let's go get dinner," but isn't like, let's go get junk food, let's go get salads. Like those kind of people are crucial in your life, because it's real easy to fall into bad habits. So having those positive players is, you need them in any aspect.
You gave me a good segue into this other question I was about to ask you. You talk about worrying about the stigma of needing to be skinny as we talk about ice cream and junk food.
Yeah.
So I said it was a nice little segue there. Can you talk about the pressure and how you overcame that pressure?
So it was hard. I still struggle with it, because there is an expectation that we are supposed to look a certain way. Not just women, but men have that expectation too. And it's funny because a couple years ago we went to Universal. I got my husband a T-shirt. It's Shrek, and it says "Living that dad bod life," and love that shirt. And I told him, I was like, "I'm just saying, more people went to see Shrek than Magic Mike."
Right.
But I had to realize, like, being skinny is it's just not going to happen for me. I don't have the body shape that's going to happen, but I can be fit. And honestly, like, I've met some other women in the workout world, that when you find out their weight, you're like, "There's no way you're that heavy," and it's because they're dense, they're solid muscle. And the thing is like, I'm at a point now where I when people look at me, they don't believe I'm in my 180s, and they're like, "There's no way you're in your 180s." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm lifting over 260 pounds.
Right.
I can't lift that if I'm 120.
Exactly.
And so understanding that being fit is better than being skinny was a crucial part of that. And that's something I hope that all people eventually understand. I've known people that, one of the girls I work out with, you know, she's lost 40 pounds and she's doing great, but she's also a bigger girl, but she does cycle and see. She bikes 1,000 miles in 1 week. Like, I don't know a lot of people that can do that. And
I don't
so
think I could drive 1,000 miles in a week, Arthur. You know, whoa.
And so understanding that being fit and in shape looks different was a big part of it. And then spreading that word out there for people. Like, I'm not saying, you know, go eat whatever you want, but don't punish yourself either. And if you're working it off, like, there's a balance. It's just finding that balance.
You know, I think we could have a psychological discussion if we ever wanted to. Why not many men went to see Magic Mike? There might be other reasons why, okay? But anyway, we're at that time of the show.
It's the lightning round.
Yes, it's the lightning round. Just the first thing that comes to your mind, one word, short replies. And Dr. Davis and I are going to alternate off of these. So the first one word that describes your journey.
Hope.
All right. Hardest day or strongest version of yourself?
Strongest version of myself.
Okay, number 3, motivation or discipline?
Discipline all day long.
All right. One
Sounds
habit
like someone from the Army. Go ahead.
Motivation only lasts for a little while, but discipline is consistency.
Mm-hmm.
What's one habit that changed your life?
Drinking more water.
Number 5, the biggest misconception about getting fit.
I think the one we just talked about, being fit versus being skinny.
Right.
A moment you almost gave up but didn't.
Oh, like every day.
Yeah, that's a good answer, but
Yeah.
Number 7, what does showing up mean to you?
Whatever it needs to be that day. Some days when you go to the gym, if it's 15 minutes, at least you were there for 15 minutes. Just get there and do what you can.
Right. What's something people don't see about your journey?
A lot of times people, when they see me, they don't realize that I have a pacemaker and heart problem. They just see somebody out there running. They don't see the asthma, the autoimmune, the heart problem. And I think if they knew that they'd be a little less judgy about how fast I'm running.
All right.
Number 9, and I'm going to come back because I got a question after that. But number 9, one piece of advice to someone struggling right now.
Just don't give up that hope. Every day, just do what you can, even if it's just get up and take a shower or make your bed, whatever you need to accomplish one thing each day. It will turn into many things each day. But if you can get one thing done, tomorrow you can do two.
Yep.
And then finish this sentence. My life changed when I decided blank.
When I decided I want to run a 5K.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, and that's, again, the perfect segue, because my question I said I was going to go back to, do you think it's better that most people don't know that you have a pacemaker when you're running? Because if they did, would they treat you any different?
So it's funny you should say that. I had an instance last summer. Had a young kid. We were out on a trail run. It was only, I think it was 6 miles. I say a short run. For me, that's a short run, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this kid was out there and he was running behind me, and I kept thinking he was going to pass me, and he didn't. And we got to the finish, or closer to the finish line. I was like, "You can go around me, like the trail wide." And he's like, "No, I want to keep your pace if that's okay." And I was like, "Yeah, no problem." We got across the finish line, and he was like, "Can I give you a hug? Like, I really appreciate you letting me run with you." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And he was like, "I'm not saying you're this old, but you kind of remind me of my mom." And so,
And he was never heard from again.
no,
Yeah.
no, it was funny because like literally when his mom turned the corner and I saw her, I was like, "Oh my God, like we're twins." But he,
So you killed him and blamed his mom.
all right. So he said, he told his mom, he's like, "Oh, I've been running with this lady. Like she was really nice and let me run with her." And his mom said, "I appreciate you keeping an eye on my son. He's got a pacemaker and I really don't want him out here running like this." And I went, "Oh," I said, "I have a pacemaker." And she was like, "Wait, what?" And so it opened up this opportunity for this kid who his mom was like, "You shouldn't be running, you shouldn't be running." And now she's like, wait a second. There are other people out here with this that are running. So sometimes I worry that people would be like, "Oh, we got to make modifications for her because she's slower." Whatever. I am slow. I don't care. That's not here nor there. But I almost wish that more people knew, because I feel like if they knew, they would be more inclined to go do this themselves when they have these problems.
Right.
I met a gentleman last month. My brother and I went and ran a race. And like I said, the guy I ran with him for 3 miles, and he's got an irregular heartbeat. And it was nice to know that I was not the only heart patient out there. And I feel like the other part of that is that maybe more people who are having these health challenges would be more inclined to go do these things because they would know they're not out there alone, or that they can't do it. It's like, no, you can. You just got to find a different way.
I'm just asking because I have no idea. But listening to you, are there no races of people that have heart problems or pacemakers?
Yes and no. So there's there's runs that they do for like heart health and this, that, and the other. But I have yet to find like a true ADA accessible run. I've seen ADA people out on these runs, but I've never seen a true ADA accessible run for like amputees or anything like that. I say that my very first marathon, though, I was watching this guy in front of me, and I don't know what else to call it, but like a leash, but he was literally like tethered to another person. I ran up on them I finally caught up with them, right? And so I realized that this kid who was tethered to this other person, it was his guide person. He was blind and he was out there running 26 miles.
Wow.
Wow.
But
he kept telling him, don't worry, it's right up around this bend.
Right.
But sorry, folks. That's terrible.
But you don't know until you see it that you can do that.
Yeah. I'm surprised, and anyone listening from the ADA should understand the importance of everywhere having races like that, or runs, not even a race, a run like that, so that people with disabilities, like you say, in a wheelchair, that I've known people when I lived in Indiana that were in a wheelchair that would go for miles and miles and miles, and they had special wheels on a special wheelchair and stuff that was almost like tire wheels that they could, and they did that to build up strength and everything else.
Oh yeah, and their biceps were probably amazing.
Yeah, but think about that. If you're in a non-motorized wheelchair, okay, you need your biceps to be like that. So I mean, that, and I would go out and watch something like that just to cheer people on for, like we always talk about the motivation and the resilience. So the people that go out there and do this. So, Rita, if you can tell us about your books. I know you've written 2 of them, Fat to Fit, My Health Journey, as well as the cookbook, Eating My Fluff into Tough.
Yes.
And I said that right. Okay. I was like, God, please don't let me mispronounce that. What made you decide to write those books?
So I wrote the Fat to Fit book because I wanted people to realize they weren't alone. That was the biggest thing is, so when I was going through this journey at first, I'm like, man, there's nobody else out here with these things, doing these things. And then you meet people along the journey and they also felt like they were alone. And so I wrote the book, and all the feedback I've gotten is that people feel like they're talking to their friend. Because I wrote the book like we were having a conversation. I wasn't telling people, go do this. It was, this is what I tried, this worked and this didn't, and this is how I felt about it, so that people knew, like, you have to feel validated about what you're feeling. It's so hard because we're so used to like pushing everything down. By letting people know that they're validated in how they feel and what they're doing, and it's motivated people. I'm like, all right, we're in the motivation stage. I need you to get to the discipline stage, but it's at least motivated people to start their journey. And then I'm like, once you start, you can build that discipline. And then I put out the cookbook to kind of go with it, trying to find healthier versions. If you're like me, I love Mexican food. I love my tacos. It doesn't mean I need to be eating them the way I do. And so I came up with different ways to cook things that were, 1, less time consuming, and 2, a slightly healthier option.
Healthier version.
That's awesome.
And you know what? I think there's so many people today that are switching to healthier versions of everything. Just being a diabetic. I know that my wife has switched to so many, using like stevia or something like that instead of sugar. It's just so much healthier for us.
Oh yeah. And even like when I make my cakes, my husband loves when I bake now, because instead of using sugar, I use local honey. Stuff like that is huge.
Exactly. Yep.
So, and then the next book is coming out in a few weeks, and that's a little bit different, I think, than everybody is anticipating. But I'm excited for the next one because it's called "The Struggles Are Real, Real Fun," and it's these these different stories, these short stories of the things that we've talked about, and explaining, how to find a different way to look at life.
Where can listeners find out more about yourself and your books?
So I do have a website. It's called flufftotough.com. You'll see it. It's bright purple.
I've been there.
My books are on there, my blogs, any upcoming events. Whenever I record a podcast, I share it on my website. So all of that will be on that website. And then they can also follow my Facebook page. I just went ahead and started that. It's also the Fluff to Tough. It's all the little things in between, whenever I do a race, posting pictures or where I'm going to be, so people can be like, oh man, I want to go run at that race, or I want to go try that thing, so that I can connect with people out there in the wild.
And as most of our listeners should know, if they haven't, all of these links will be in the written description. So if you don't have to scroll back, you can watch it again if you want, but you don't have to go back to Fluff the Tough type stuff. It's there. It's all on the website. Before we get to, I have a couple of final questions. I don't want to forget, I've already thanked you for your service to our country, but tell us about Randolph County Veteran Services in Asheboro.
So Randolph, I've actually switched from Randolph to the state now, but I still work with both. So veteran services, I'll just give you a veteran services in general. VSOs are in 32 states throughout the nation, and their job is to help connect veterans with their benefits. We connect them with the VA, we connect them with healthcare, we help them find jobs, we help them find housing, employment, whatever they need. Go to a veteran service officer, and that person is going to help you connect to everything you need.
Yep.
Let's see.
Well,
Go
just
ahead,
curiosity, how many marathons have you run?
I've run two marathons and one ultra marathon.
Wow.
I say that because I've also been doing these other things. They're called mammoth marches. It's a 20-mile endurance hike, so you're not running, but you're putting in the miles. And those are all over the nation. You can do those anywhere if you just look up their website. They're a whole lot of fun. I highly recommend you do them with somebody, because 20 miles can get boring real quick. And I've done several of those. We just did one last weekend. I'm getting ready to do another one this October.
Wow. Okay, I'm going to ask you two final questions if I can. At what point did you start to feel like I'm just not surviving anymore, I'm rebuilding?
There is a post out there, and it's a picture of my jeans. It's a picture of the jeans I started with versus the picture I'm in now. And that was the moment where I went, it's real now, because I physically saw the inches difference. It was no longer, I'm just trying to get up and go to the gym and I'm just trying to function. It was, I am finally getting in shape and I feel good and I look good and my pants fit good. And that was really the day that it was like, yes. I want to say it was like, the first time I ran a marathon or the first medal I got, but it was it was the day that my jeans fit the way I wanted them to.
It's kind of funny because, I've lost 40 pounds recently myself, but I've noticed the belt. Okay, because I'm too lazy to go buy another belt, that I'm making more holes in the belt so that my pants stay on, okay, that they don't fall down. But in the back of your head, I understand that. It's like, okay, this is a victory to keep going.
Yeah.
This is exactly what you need.
Now that you're on the other side of so much of this, what drives you to share your story and help others?
Just that, wanting to help others. Like, I feel like if I had the people in my corner, right? But I feel like if I had more knowledge and a role model to follow, that it might have made the journey easier. And so that was the goal, is to be a positive role model for people that are trying to get back into shape or to try and do something new. Like, if I can touch one person and get them in the right direction, like, that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yep. And that's a great way. I hate to say it again, but that's why we do the show, is to help people. It's not monetized or anything. If we help just one person each episode, we've done it. And that's why we present stories like this, because a lot of people see themselves in the situation. Like, that's why you wrote the book. It's that people see themselves in the situation. And I highly recommend go out and buy the book. If this story relates to you in any way, go buy that book, read about it, and the links are there. You can contact her on Facebook or through the website and stuff. And maybe you could be that next success story, that goes there, because that's what the resilience is all about. Now, Rita, your story continues to amaze us. It's a story of hope, the ability to conquer obstacles in your path and ignore and not worry about the stigma of needing to be skinny. With your writing, the inner power you have to show up when things get bad, your constant training and discipline to inspire, your motivation is something every listener we hope will take away from tonight's show. Now, please take care of yourself, and thank you so much for joining us on the show this evening.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. Well, that it was great having Rita on, as we said. She's a good guest. Before I go into the questions that I had, one of the things that I've noticed is that something she said too, and one of the reasons we bring some of these guests on is that people relate to what they have in the book. I'm thinking back to Lisa Conway. I had to look at the name there for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, the one that was shocked over 100 times with the ECT. She had mentioned during her interview of how many people have been contacting her that have gone through the same things.
Yeah.
People see themselves in a situation, and like she even said too, like veterans want to talk to other veterans.
Yeah.
And you could write a book on this, but if you're not a veteran, you're not getting it from the angle that they're getting it from.
Yeah.
And I just want people to realize, that's why we bring a lot of people like this on the show.
Absolutely.
It's not to promote a book, because this isn't an author show.
It's to humanize the
mental
mental health content.
Yeah. And their stories are so important because people can relate to their stories. And you can see from a mental point of view how that's going to help you, as well as a physical point. So after hearing Rita's story, from all the physical challenges to the mental battles and ultimately rebuilding that life, okay, what stands out to you the most about a mental health perspective?
What, when Rita was talking about, facing the stigma, realizing that things may need to look different for her, those were the things that really stood out to me because, I think it's important to understand that it's our own journey. Whatever change we're trying to make, it's our own personal journey, and not everyone's journey is going to look the same. So it was really refreshing to hear her talking about that, and hearing her say that, I still struggle with the stigma at times, but like I have to kind of work through that, but I know the stigma is not true. So those were some things that really stood out to
and
me.
I think dealing with so many people that were veterans and have been in the army, I think that little bit of discipline is so important because, I know this, but I also know this. And, you hear that we have to keep the focus our objective, and I think that's from a veteran's point of view. I think it's real easy for them to follow that, and God bless her. I mean, she's done phenomenally. You can see sometimes she struggles with things, but she just keeps going through it. And, like she said, the last couple of days have been tough for her. So, yep. Now, for someone who's watching or listening today, who they may feel stuck, whether it's because of health issues, depression, or just feeling like they lost their way, what would you want them to take away from this conversation?
That you don't have to stay where you are. If you're in a situation and you feel stuck and you would like things to change, it's just a matter of starting to move in the direction of that change as best you can. And the other beautiful thing in the world is, uh, you know, with most problems that we deal with, there are people out there that want to help us deal with them, or
Hmm.
want to help us find effective ways. And there's help all around us. So that'd be the thing, that one of the best steps that someone who feels stuck could take would be to just reach out for some help, you know, and start addressing the issues.
Yeah, start today. Do that one small step.
Yeah.
Okay, one final question I want to ask. Do you think we sometimes define progress the wrong way? And how can people start to define what progress looks like in their own personal lives?
I think we absolutely define progress in the wrong way many times, because progress is relative. What progress looks like is going to be relative to the person making progress.
Mhm.
For one individual, um, I'll give a perfect example, and I'm so excited that she is getting ready to transition home. But my niece
Right. Yeah.
Adelie,
Hmm.
you know, um, I sat with her. There's always an adult with her. And so last week, I took a shift and hung out with her, had the time of my life because she's absolutely hilarious.
I saw the pictures on Facebook.
Oh, we had a blast.
Hmm.
And she's one of my favorite people on earth. She really is. I mean, she's just such a great kid. But one of the things for her is she's working on respiratory things. So one of the things that she had to do was just, blow in this tube, basically, you know.
Right.
And
Hmm.
so and we had fun with that. She was putting, she put tape on her nose and was blowing the tape, and then I did the same thing. And but like, would that be progress for me? I don't know, but that's beside the point. With what she's dealing with, you know, her just being able to, exhale at a certain, to a certain degree is
Right.
important. I think that we overlook that. I always call it comparing our insides to everyone else's outsides, where um, we start to look around and everything looks okay. And it's like, well, no one else is having any issues with things. And I'm here to assure you as a therapist, that is not the case at all.
Yeah.
Everyone has issues that they're dealing with.
And everybody has different ways of covering that up
Absolutely.
too with their issues.
Absolutely. You're
You
right.
don't, I, I, I've learned, I think, more and more. I used the example the other day. I heard a friend of mine say something about, yeah, and I'm sorry, folks, and this is somebody else saying, yeah, it's not bad language or anything, but those fat pigs that go to Walmart, and they just ride
Yeah.
around the store in the carts, because they're too lazy or too overweight or you don't know that.
Right.
Okay, you have
Hmm.
no clue whether this is something that's a thyroid issue
Right.
or, there's some other kind of issue that's going on. Don't judge
Hmm.
people, I mean, nobody knows what the other person's dealing with.
Yeah.
Unless you know them personally, you have no clue. And even then, you still might not know what the other person is dealing with.
Yeah.
So, listening to Rita's story today, it reminds you that the battles people are fighting aren't always visible, as we say.
Yeah. So many people are dealing with things physically, mentally, that others may never see or fully understand. And what Rita shared today is something we see often, but don't always talk about enough.
I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is that progress doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just about showing up, even on the hardest days. Like you said, just be there.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Those small steps, those moments where we can choose to keep going, they matter more than people realize. That's where real change begins.
So if you're watching or listening today and you feel stuck or overwhelmed and like you lost even a part of yourself, you know this, that you're not alone and you don't have to have it all figured out in one day.
Yeah. Start small. Take one tiny step. Give yourself the same grace that you would give to someone else.
And again, we want to thank Rita Honeycutt for joining us today and sharing her story with such honesty and strength. And remember, the links will be in the description. And she talked about a new book that she had
Yeah.
coming out and want people to look inside the description because I will add the link to that new book in the description as well.
Of course, we want to thank all of you for being here with us as well.
If this episode meant something to you, hit like, subscribe, 7,000 of you have done so far, and share it with someone who may need to hear it, because it really does help.
Yeah. Remember to visit our website at yourlifematterspodcast.com to contact either Steve or myself, learn more about the show, purchase licensed merchandise, and even request to become a guest on our show. This is where Rita's interview came from.
Yep. A lot of the interviews have come through the website. So keep showing up, keep taking that next step, and never forget, your life matters. God bless you, and we hope to see you again next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Your Life Matters Show podcast. If today's conversation resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share the episode so more people can be part of these important conversations around mental health. And remember, your life matters. We hope to see you again next week.